So it's really important to kind of check in and do an audit of how much am I eating every day, right? What kind of foods am I putting in my mouth and how much am I putting in my mouth? It's really important to be able to have kind of an assessment tool to say, am I under or overeating? Because I want you to reach your goals, you want to reach your goals, and the calories is going to be one of the biggest factors if you get to where you want to be, right? And how you want to feel, move, and look. So if your goal is to gain muscle, change the shape of the body, right? Get stronger, it's really important that you're not under eating. We got to make sure you have enough calories and especially protein. But if your goal is body fat loss, it's really important that you're hitting your daily calorie goal that's in a deficit. Because if you have, I'm talking like 8 extra almonds, right? That's going to be a lot of extra calories. That's going to take you out of the deficit and keep you either at maintenance or even a little bit above, and you're not going to see that body fat loss. So I am not saying that you have to track all the time going forward. I am just saying that it is really important to have an idea of what you're currently doing so that we know what to change, especially if you're not seeing the changes that you want. I get many, many clients that say, I'm doing everything. I'm eating clean and healthy, but I'm still not seeing body fat loss. And so we've got to look at the calorie amounts. And the only way to do that is to track it. So I want to spend time on this particular video explaining how do we track, from looking at an actual label to putting in an app. What are some tips, tricks, do's, and don'ts? I will have separate videos that cover what to do when you decide, hey, I want to track long term. How do I set myself up for success with tracking and pre-planning the meals the night before, right? All of those would be separate videos. This is just going to be, what do I do on day one as a self-assessment to see where I'm at, right? So first, you're going to need 2 things. One, you're going to need some sort of app to enter all of your food in. I use Macro First. I also use the Phorm app. There's MyFitnessPal, right? So I'm just going to term it as app. You use whichever one you'd like. You also are going to need a scale. So I linked one on Amazon that you can get. This one I just got at Target. You can get them literally anywhere. But it's important to know the difference between volume, right? Using measuring cups for things, and weight for a scale. This is not accurate. Volume is just a matter of how much does it fill up? How much space does it take? Versus weight is actually literally how many grams, ounces am I eating? So much more accurate with the scale. So with that said, let's talk about some tips in getting ready for this. We have to know how much you're eating, right? We have to. I have many clients that will come and say, I'm eating clean and healthy. I'm still not losing body fat. I'm like, well, that's great. And if it's a calorie issue, clean and healthy foods can still add up in calories just the same as unhealthy foods, and you can still gain body fat or stuck not losing it. Another thing is, I'm an intuitive eater, but I'm pretty sure I'm under eating. I know I'm not overeating. I know I'm hitting my calorie goal. Well, I would honestly say 98% of the time when I have somebody track, when they tell me that, they are still significantly over their goal, and that's why they don't see the body fat loss they want. They're always floored. I had no idea these little things were adding up. So with that said, this assessment is not saying you got to track your macros forever. It is just saying you need to track them for a couple days so we know how far under or over you are, so we can gauge the adjustments we need to make for you to reach your goals. This is extremely important and a tool that we really can't skip. So I'm going to give you some tips on how to do it most effectively. First, I always suggest on a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, because Monday to Thursday are similar. Friday is half work, half play, and Saturday is mostly play and similar to Sunday. So we have a kind of a relative idea of what you're eating. It's also important to track on days you're busy, not busy, stressed, emotional, out of town, because we need an overall idea of what do you do with your habits, how much are you eating, quality of food in those different situations. And then we know how to adjust them when you're in those situations. And that's going to keep you in line to reach the goals that you want, right? We want to set ourselves up for success. So that's why I say those 3 days, but please feel free to track for your assessment purposes over other days. Now, here's what happens every time I tell a client, you got to track what you're eating so I can see how far under or over you are. And they say, I don't want you to see it. Well, the joy is with this, I'm not going to see it. So you got to be truthful with yourself, because when we have someone else looking at it, or we're accountable and we see what we're eating and it's actually written down, it can be a little overwhelming. So for numbers' sake, let's say your goal is a fat loss goal at 2,000 calories a day. So out of those 2,000 calories, right, as you're entering things into your app, it's going to then deduct those. So if you've got 2,000 calories, if you have a 500 calorie breakfast, it'll drop that down to 1,500, and you're going to see that number go down and down. Now, I don't want you, for our purposes right now of tracking as an assessment to see what you're currently doing, I don't care about that total calorie number. I don't care if we're under, over, nothing. You're going to continue to eat in your normal pattern, even if it's 3,000 calories over. I need to see exactly what you're drinking and eating, every lick, bite, taste of everything all day. Because if you say, you know what, I usually would have 3 refills of Dr. Pepper because I have to put it in the app and see where I am. I don't want to drink 3, so I'm only going to drink 1. Well, that is just no good, because that's going to be a flawed system. I need you to drink and track all of those 3 Dr. Peppers, because you would have on a normal day. Those 3 Dr. Peppers have helped get your body to where you are, and I need to know that, right? You need to know that, because you're the one that's going to be reviewing these. So please eat the exact same as you would on a normal day. So one thing that's really easy to overeat on is nuts or chips, right? Candy. It's mindless eating. You're in the car, pulling them in and out, right? I do that all the time. All of a sudden I know my bag of nuts is halfway gone. That's like 800 calories. I didn't even realize it. And it's like a healthier snack. It's not like a Snickers bar. So it's really good for us to see those things we're eating, especially when we're mindlessly doing it, how fast they add up. So here's a couple things going into this. First, to start, you've got your scale, right? We are going to track as we go, because we're going to eat as we usually would. So a couple things. In your app, let's start with breakfast. Let's say that's the first thing, right? Obviously modify this to your day. Breakfast, let's say you typically eat, and I'm actually just gonna give you foods that I eat. So I'll do like 2 eggs, and I usually do green peppers, onions, and some sort of meat, either salmon or steak, and then I'll add avocado at the end, right? I like a big savory breakfast. One of the best ways to start your day. Don't start with carbs, does stuff to your blood sugar levels. Savory breakfast with eggs is one of the best things you can do. So that's what I have. So I'm eating this every day. I couldn't tell you how many calories it is. I know it's filling, right? Because the protein and the fats. I don't know what it adds up to though. And because I think it's healthier, it probably can't be that bad, right? This is what we say to ourselves. So I want you to track it. So with that said, right, you pull out your app and you start the day and you say, great, meal 1, I'm gonna create a meal. So 2 eggs, right? Now you're gonna have to, since there's not maybe a barcode for this, you're gonna go into the search bar and you'll say egg, and it will be a common egg. Add that, and quantity 2. Great, that deducts a certain amount of calories out of that 2,000. You're gonna watch it drop. Then you're going to chop your green onions, and or your onions and your green peppers, and right, and you'll weigh on your scale, not your measuring cup, because this is volume and there's gonna be lots of air and space. We're gonna weigh, you know, because you could say, oh, a 1/4 cup. And then when it says green peppers, it will say quantity, grams, ounces, or cups. And it's easy just to throw them all in this and then enter it. But that's not really realistic because of all the spacing like I just mentioned. So in a separate video, I teach you how to use the scale and why there's a difference between volume and weight. So instead, you are going to either place a paper towel or wax paper or just on this and clean it and actually weigh in ounces or grams how many green peppers. And then you'll go into your app and you'll say, okay, this is the tracking tool and it's going to be ounces or grams, and you'll enter how much. You can put it in here, but you're gonna then put it in here and on the scale, and then but you need to know how much this weighs first. So let me back up. So you're gonna put this on the scale and weigh it, and then you're gonna zero it out or tear it. And then it goes back to 0. Then you can add your peppers and it will tell you how much the peppers are without this. Again, I go over that in the video of how to use a scale. And then you'll be able to do that for the onions and then the meat. So meat, do what is best for you. I have heard 50-50, weigh it raw or weigh it cooked. I don't like meat raw. I don't want it all over my scale and my counter. I don't want to mess with it. So I weigh all of my meats cooked. As long as you're doing it consistently, that's going to be great. Right? I also want to know what it actually, once it's cooked, what it shriveled to, the size and everything. So I prefer it cooked. So I am going to cook my steak. I'll take that out of the pan. I'm going to, again, put some sort of covering on my, scale, unless you don't mind washing it repeatedly, and weigh that meat. And then you're like, great, that's more ounces than I thought, or more grams than I thought, whatever you're going to calculate it with. And then you'll, add it to your skillet. So as you get your skillet with your eggs, and you typically just chuck peppers, meat, however you're going to do it, you're going to want to make sure to do those separately and weigh each of those things and then add it to the dish. And if that whole thing is your serving size, fantastic. If you make it all, mix it, and then you divide it evenly in half, meaning that you weigh half and weigh the other half to make sure they really are equal, then you know very easily, okay, the total calories was 600, but I'm only eating half, I'm going to divide that and say it's a half portion and it's only 300 calories. And the great thing is what I do, take that other half, put it in the fridge, and you've already got it made for tomorrow. So I hate chopping and cooking. So I always try to do double, and then I've got my breakfast for the next day. So you see how you'll look at that and you'll either say, oh my gosh, that's way more calories than I thought. I need to reduce the serving sizes, or I need to not add so much avocado. Avocado is what's going to do it, because you can add, like a little wedge or a half wedge or a 3/4 wedge of your avocado, and it adds so many healthy, good fats for you, but a lot of calories. So we don't know that, right? Because we're just tossing it in, eyeballing it, not tracking. And that's why we do this assessment. And you'll be able to see, oh my goodness, I think going forward, I need to do a little less avocado because it's going to take up a lot of that 2,000 calories for the day, right? You're going to watch, let's say your avocado is 250 calories when you put on the scale. And out of 2,000, you see 250 go down for avocado. And you're thinking, I'd rather have something else later. I'm going to use half the amount of avocado, and then you can use those calories, right, for something else later. So you see that as once you start to track longer, you'll see how you kind of plug and play certain foods. But for our purposes, we're just testing how much you're eating every day. So whatever you usually eat, now ideally what you now would like to eat, you put everything in as you would eat every single day, or this isn't worth our time because it's not going to be an accurate reflection of your current habits. So great, you eat your meal. Then let's say a little bit later, you want a protein bar. These are from Costco, right? I think a ton of us eat these. Cookie dough and chocolate brownie. It has both flavors on the back. So I can then say, great, I know I'm going to have one of these bars. Every bar will be the same because they're prepackaged, they're not crumbled, they're not broken, it's one whole unit. So on my scale, or on my the label I'm going to look at, so I'm going to see it says serving size is 1 bar, great, because that's all that I ate, 190 calories. So the great thing is about using an app is you just scan the box, right? And it will say, now with this, you don't want to scan the actual carton box, you're going to open it and scan it preferential to this versus this, right? You need to scan the exact item. So you'll scan it, it will pop it in, and it will say quantity. Now you may decide to eat half because that's all they usually do. Great, make sure you put 0.5, so it's only calculating half. If you eat 2 of them, great, eat 2, put quantity 2. Doesn't matter as long as you are accurately tracking what you normally would eat. So that's super easy. Barcodes save you, which most of us eat processed foods or things with some sort of container. And all you have to do is look at how much of that item. Everything else they're going to input for you because it transfers directly from the barcode, which is awesome. So let's talk about labels for 1 second. We'll have a video more in depth on this, but I just want you to realize that when you're looking at these things, a couple things to keep in mind. That as you're entering, these numbers of calorie totals are not exactly accurate. They're estimates, and they're allowed to do that. They allow them to round down by just a few. So this truly might be maybe 196 calories. It might be 192. We don't know because they're allowed to round down just so they don't have a whole bunch of really weird odd numbers. So when you're only putting in 190, keep in mind there's a chance that these numbers here, when you add the fat and the carb and the protein, if you add those up and it doesn't exactly equal 190, people will ask me, hey, I'm confused on that. What do I enter? Well, it's more accurate, right, to calculate these all out, but that's confusing. We don't want to worry about that. We're just doing an assessment. So just know that we're going to do 1 bar at 190, and then just be aware that this typically is a couple calories less. But it's just good to know with labels how to read them, what to do with them. We'll talk more about that later. But again, you're going to eat your protein bar. You're going to scan the bar on the individual package, and then you're going to enter it. Super simple. So later, let's say we talk about having a super healthy lunch. Now, healthy lunches can still have a lot of calories. So I'm going to put some spinach together. Spinach, lettuce, don't have very many calories. I do like to watch the fiber for each of those. So typically I'll take, the amount of spinach that I want. And again, it's hard to kind of shove it in a measuring cup because how do you measure that? That's volume again. So if you really want to be picky, you can still set it on your scale. It will weigh it for you. Or you can look at it and the calories are literally under 5, eyeball it, add it to there. Veggies like that are a little bit easier when there's such low calories. That's why sometimes I'll say veggies don't count for calories because they're so low. If you want to be exactly accurate, you put it on a scale. But if it's under just a few calories, it's okay just to say spinach. I'm estimating, 2 cups, and that's this many calories. Only with vegetables and only if it's something like that that's very, very low and a little bit harder to weigh. Other vegetables and things though, I always weigh vegetables raw. It's easier. I don't want a messy vegetable, whole steaming thing of broccoli on my scale. So I am very consistent with measuring my vegetables raw. Do what works for you, but that's what I suggest. So let's go back to our lunch. We've got our spinach. We've entered it into our app and it will come up saying 1 cup, 2 cups, 1 handful, or ounces or grams. Sometimes your app won't give you choices you want. Like let's say you did weigh it and it comes in ounces. Well, it only gives you cup options. Just do the best that you can to estimate. And I'm not talking about just lettuce. Sometimes it can be any food. I tend to always overestimate. So if it's like small or medium, I tend to enter the medium because I'd rather say I ate more calories because then it will still keep me in a fat loss mode. But if I'm like, oh yeah, I'm pretty sure it was a small one. Well, in actuality, it was small in between small and medium, right? Then those extra calories don't get accounted for. So we generally go err on the side of too many calories and stay on the safe side because then again, it puts us in a surplus. So we've got our spinach in our bowl. Now next we want our protein because we want protein at every side of meal. Again, this is for people that are okay with meat. So I'm going to cook my salmon. Again, I cook it, right? Then I weigh it afterwards. So I've got my salmon cooked, the usual portion size that I would do. I'm then going to come out, put it on my scale and weigh it, right? It will give you the amount of ounces or grams. Then you type into your app, salmon, and it's going to come up with usually it'll say common salmon. That's the one I usually pick. And then you're just going to drop down to the serving sizes and either enter whatever the drop down says, ounces or grams. I'll also include some links to websites that will convert because sometimes it's only ounces, but I have it in grams. Now your scale will go grams or ounces, kilograms, pounds, right? So you have the option. So sometimes I'll look at MyFitnessPal and I'll type salmon up first and I'll see what the drop down is. I'm like, oh, okay, it needs to be in ounces. And then I'll just put it on there in ounces, or you can just reweigh it. So you'll get more and more used to doing this, but we need to know how much you're eating. Salmon is very high calorie because of the fat grams. You think it's healthy and it is, but it adds up very quickly. So you're like, wow, that was 300 calories, but it also gives you an amazing amount of protein. Throw it on your salad. Next, you're gonna add a nut, maybe it's sunflower seeds or walnuts or whatever nut you want, right? So usually take a handful of what you would have just diced or thrown into the salad, but this time before you enter the salad, put it on your scale and weigh it out, add it to the app, then put it in your salad. So you see how what we're doing is we're going and we're building these meals. We're gonna take every little piece and look at how much of that I'm adding. Now the dressing is the hardest part. It can be a little overwhelming because how do you measure dressing, right? Oil-based are gonna be a lot less calories, but ranch, something like a ranch adds up very, very quickly. So a few things with that on how to measure ranch, because this is kind of hit or miss because we're estimating what you usually do. Now it's different month from now, a week from now, if you continue to decide to still keep tracking, because then you're gonna weigh it out first and then add it to your salad because you're gonna be aware of how much you're putting in. But today we're looking at what you've been putting in. So we gotta estimate how much do you usually squirt all over your salad, right? Or pour. So we're gonna do the best we can to estimate it because calories come a lot from dressings. So sometimes when you're at a restaurant, right, you'll get like a little plastic clear container of a dressing on the side when you say, right? And I would say that's estimated to be around a 1/4 cup. Again, estimating, unless you want to actually bring it home, right? Depends on how specific you want to be. But best estimate is about a 1/4 cup. So my thought is, okay, so I'm probably, and I use all that on my salad, I'm probably using this much dressing, ranch, oil-based, whatever you're doing. So we can either squirt in, pour in enough dressing to fill this, knowing that it's about that same, and then just dump it all over your salad. And then when you go to enter it, you'll say I had a 1/4 cup of this dressing, right? Because you can scan the barcode of this dressing and then add the serving size for 1/4 cup. And again, I will have links with conversions if any of this is overwhelming, if your drop down does not offer what you measured in. Another thing you can do is, because we can pour it in here and then dump. Sometimes we can put the ranch bottle on the scale first and then tear it, meaning you hit 0 and it clears out what's in there. And then you then pour it all over your salad and then put the bottle back on here, right? And then it will tell you it's now negative, let's say 15 grams. You know that you put 15 grams on your salad because it's 15 grams less than what it was a second ago when it was full. So that's also another way that you can measure dressing instead of like having to squirt it and peel it out because we want to make this easy, right? But important to understand how much we put on our dressings. So that, what I would consider as a healthy meal, I could be out getting pizza or a burger, but I feel like a spinach salmon salad is really good. It can be 500 to 600 calories. It adds up very quickly because of the healthy fats in the protein with the salmon and the nuts and the dressing. So it'll just be very eye-opening of, wow, that's a lot higher than I thought. going forward, not right now when we're assessing it, but going forward, I probably need to drop back on some of the dressing or some of the nuts, right? I really want you to get the protein amount. So maybe not adjust the protein piece. So then a little while later, you want a snack, okay? So let's talk about crackers. So on a label, it will tell you serving size is roughly 16 pieces, right? And it will usually either say, like this one for nuts says about, this one says 16 pieces. So why is because the wheat thin generally is the same for every single one. So they can say 16 pieces is 140 calories. Well, if this one is half broken, a quarter broken, an edge broken, then that's not the same. So our calorie count is going to be off. Now in that case, if you're counting a whole one as they are, but it's only getting half, you're actually going to be getting less calories than what this says because they're broken up, right? So we need to look at, I don't necessarily look at the pieces unless it's something like a wheat thin where pretty accurately, I mean, you can weigh a couple to make sure they're about the same, but this will be a little bit easier and you can just pull out pieces and count them. When you have something that says about, you can't do that. So that's what they're like, we don't know either. And on this nuts with healthy fat, it adds up very quickly. So I will never count pieces or even about what this says for cup size. So I talk a lot about this on the video of how to use a food scale and the difference between volume and dumping it in here. So when you look at this, let's say you have nuts in the car, nuts around your house are a great snack. What do we do first, right? Because we're assessing what we've currently been doing. So first step is, okay, I'm gonna grab an average handful and I would have eaten that. Well, instead of eating it, because we gotta weigh it, set it to the side. Okay, I would have had probably 2 more handfuls. So I'd grab an average handful, set it to the side, and then a third, because that's what you would have eaten and that's what we're monitoring. So with that said, we're going to put the 3 to the side, and then we are going to put them on our scale, right? And see how many grams or ounces are in it. And then you're gonna go into your app and scan it, because it's got a barcode, but then drop to the bottom and say, yep, it is 85 grams, whatever it is, and you'll enter that, and then you're gonna see it'll populate and tell you, oh my gosh, you just ate 600 calories of nuts. So with that said, we're just assessing, so you're gonna enter it. Now I will give you tips and tricks, right, how to do this differently, right, to adjust all these habits later, but this is just about the assessment piece. So now, it's important to put it all on the scale. I don't want you to pick those nuts back up and put them in a quarter cup, because it does say serving size about a quarter cup. So it would be easy just to take them out and easier to put them in this. But if you, like I said in the other video where I measure volume and weight, this is inaccurate because every one of those nuts weighs something different. A cashew versus a pistachio versus an almond have different ounce weights, right? So it's going to equal different grams. And so if I just dump a mixed thing in here, I also am going to overload it. There's gaps in between. Fat grams you don't want to mess with because they are over double what a carb or a protein is. Every gram of carb is 4 calories. Every gram of protein is 4 calories. Every gram of fat is 9. So your calories add up over twice as fast. So you've got to be very aware of that. So that's why we don't just measure, oh, it says a quarter cup serving size, I'm gonna put a quarter cup in. That's not accurate, especially we need to know exactly how much you've been eating. So you're gonna put them on a scale and measure that, not using the ease of a quarter cup, because I know it's so much easier. But for our assessment purposes, we're not going to do it because it's not accurate, and you probably will say that you're only eating 170, when in reality, you're probably eating 300. So then we go, let's see, we'll do dinner. You're gonna break the pieces apart just like we did, right? So as you cook something, before you add it, or if it's a side piece, weigh it, enter it in your app, whatever you're using. Now keep in mind, you can add meals. So if you make your breakfast or your lunch and you've got everything inputted, save it as a meal. So the next day, you know exactly all the numbers. You don't have to measure everything again. Now, as long as you're using the same amount of meat, right? The same amount of nuts. If you're just grabbing a handful every time, serving sizes will be different and they add up very quickly. So you're gonna need to remeasure each time. So you can save meals that have like a fixed bar that doesn't have any variability, right? But when you have things like nuts, spinach, meat, it's based on like how thick the meat is, how many pieces did you put in. We do really need to track each of those individually. So that's something that you want to look at as things that we can save or not save. As long as if you have exact proportions each time, right, then okay, great, we can save that as a meal because you're measuring as you go. But again, those are tips we'll talk about later. This is just about how to make the assessment. But you can also save items. So if you know you're gonna have this all 3 days of your assessment, you could save it in there, just pull it up instead of having to, save the wrapper and scan it. So if these are things you're gonna eat every day, as you're tracking for these 3 days as your assessment, you can save those and then just easily add it again. But the barcodes will save you. What do we do for foods that don't have barcodes, right? You're gonna have fruits, vegetables, certain food groups, maybe your meats don't have a barcode. When you go to add a food or you're creating a meal that you can save, you're going to add food, and instead of hitting the scan barcode, you'll do a search bar and you'll type in chicken. It will say common chicken, and that has a lot of different options. Sometimes it even has restaurant meals. I don't know how accurate they are because people input those themselves, but common chicken, great. And then you go down to serving sizes. You'll have already measured it, right? Because you're gonna measure it and then add it to your meal, and you'll be able to put the ounces or grams in. And so same with an apple. With an apple, it says like small or medium or large. And sometimes it has diameters, but again, that's not very accurate. And since we want a very accurate, for these 3 days assessment of what you're doing, put the apple on the scale, and then when you go back into there, they should be able to hopefully have grams or ounces so that you can input it that way. If they don't, you have to just estimate small or medium, do your best judgment to try to get a small or medium. Because the most important thing is understanding generally, right, to the best that we can for the assessment. And then moving forward again, we'll be a little bit looser, but we've got to nail it with our initial assessment. So that takes care of foods that don't have like the barcodes that you can scan. So hopefully as you're going through your day, right, the purpose of this is just determine how much am I eating. So you're gonna track everything, even if you're overwhelmed, like this is my 6th treat or my 3rd candy bar, or oh my gosh, like I didn't eat enough protein, I'm seeing that, I better eat more. If you don't eat it every day, don't do it. Make sure to always input it with an accurate assessment of your daily routine. Because again, that's the whole point of this. So with that said, we have covered using an app and a scale, how to track as you go, looking at, what you need to know, which is just the calorie amount, scan it, make sure you adjust your serving size throughout the day as you go. Now, let's say for those 3 days, you're on the road and you don't have your scale, right? So you can take a picture of a label and enter it later. I'll keep some of my trash sometimes, or if I know I have this protein bar, I eat it in the car, but I also, I don't need to save the wrapper. When I get home, I have another one, I'll just scan it and add it then. As long as you don't miss a single thing while you're out and about, you want to add them and it's okay to add it later, just got to make sure you're still getting them in. If you're at restaurants, what do you do when you're tracking? You need an accurate assessment. So sometimes, if you're going to Cafe Rio, which has tacos and burritos and salads, they have nutritional information online. The employees don't necessarily know, but I've done that many times where I get on there, and even if it says a salad is 1,300 calories, well, I take a lot of stuff off and I do double protein. So I know my salad's not that amount of calories. So when you're tracking for this assessment, if you eat at Cafe Rio or anywhere else, always look on their website because a lot of places have nutritional value. You'll be able to look up chicken and look at their serving size and add it. I do the cheese and I don't do the corn or the rice or the beans, right? So all that's gonna make my burrito or my salad not 1,300 calories because I don't add all those things. They do the total if you add every single thing that they would put on it. I don't do a lot of those things, so my calorie number will be less. So I wanna make sure to accurately put it in less. So look online for restaurants. Sometimes in your app, if you do search Cafe Rio burrito, someone else has input it. Now, you don't know if they added extra cheese or protein, right, or withheld something, but at least it gives you a ballpark because that's better than nothing. Also, keep in mind, there's variability because the guy at Cafe Rio might give me extra protein because I was nice, but maybe the girl next time doesn't give me extra protein or as much because it's literally just a handful. They're not measuring that. I have no idea if his hand is this big or her hand is this big, or if they're nicer, they're gonna give me more, right? A lot of variability. We just do the best that we can, knowing there's things we can't control and we're just gonna estimate, but that's better than nothing. So you don't have to not eat out, right? If you're gonna go to Cafe Rio on Friday, still go to Cafe Rio because I need to know your normal eating patterns like we've talked about. So hopefully this will just be very eye-opening. Like the purpose of doing this, seeing where we are, don't chintz on anything that you would have already eaten. Use the scale, read the labels, you're just gonna enter them as you go. If you come across any questions as you're going, like, oh, that's not something that you talked about in the video, please let me know. Because again, this is an assessment. And then we'll talk again, in conclusion, another video of, how do we track better? How do we plan ahead? Some tips and, tips and tricks for that. So hopefully this is helpful, right? It's gonna be fascinating to see how much you're eating of things, how much fiber we're getting in a day, how much protein we're getting in a day, how many carbs we're having that are unhealthy versus healthy, how much unhealthy or healthy fat we're getting, and just where our habits are. Because what we're going to enter is just a reflection of everything that we do every day. And then from there, we'll figure out, what do I do, right? Especially if you're under or over the number you're supposed to be hitting. That's going to be gold and letting you know, that's why I'm not losing body fat, or that's why I'm not gaining muscle. It's really important that we do an assessment to see what you're doing every single day.